Welcome, bienvenue, bienvenido, ahlan. Welcome, all my pretty people, to another day, to another reading, to another dose in our lives. I've been toying with this concept for a few years now, that most of our existence is just us dosing ourselves. Our bodies are under continuous cycles and constant fluctuation. Our mental and emotional and spiritual existence is affected by our physical one because they are all connected, right? They are not separated. Our mental existence is a physical existence. Our emotional existence is a physical existence because we have a physical body. Our spiritual existence is a physical existence because, once again, we have a body. So, everyone likes to call drugs dosing, right? Obviously. A lot of people also dose themselves with other stimulants and depressants. Some of the most common ones that we accept socially are coffee, caffeine, and alcohol. Those things affect our mental, emotional, and spiritual existence because they affect our physical one. They are things that we use to adjust ourselves, to help rebalance ourselves. They're often misused and can be abused, which is where addictions start to stem into play. I think that almost everything that we intake into our bodies, that also includes words from other humans, things like TV, things like food, things like music, things like water. Those are also forms of dosing ourselves. If you're feeling stressed out and unable to focus and you meditate, you just dosed your physical body with a physical shift, with meditation. If you eat a snack in the middle of the day because you're hungry, you're dosing yourself. So, learning the correct dosages of things and how to use them with your particular body, I think, is the goal. That is the struggle. That is the challenge. That is one of the questions of living, is how can I dose this body so that it is me, so that it matches me. Fun little stance. That's your little tidbit, your little fun little thoughts from me, from D, part of your daily dose of D. I got my first comment. Shoot, who was it? I feel so famous. It's not true. Not famous. I just feel really proud of myself, I guess. Happy. I feel seen. That's what it is. I feel grateful. We're gonna look it up really quick because it was cool. And if you're not a bot account, that's even better. If it's a bot account, whatever. I'm kidding. It's fine. Go away. I don't want YouTube TV. I want to go to my channel. I got a video. I got a comment. There's one comment. It says, "Thank you for these." It's a positive one. My first comment was a positive one. Someone said, "Thank you." Thank you. Thanks for thanking me, and also thank you for watching and participating. If there are any books or articles or magazines or poetry or anything, if there's anything that you think that you would like me to read, put it in the comments. Let me know. We'll pick some. We'll go through it. I'm always looking for recommendations and advice. My way of thinking is not the only way of thinking. My way of thinking is also not in any way, shape, or form a true way of thinking, because it is only through the conglomeration of humanity that truth can be found. I'm just talking philosophically. Anyways, wheat. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for the gratitude. I felt really excited. I still feel really excited. I appreciate it a lot. It's cool. So you're welcome for these. Like I said, they're mostly for me so that I can maintain my goals of reading, because adulthood is challenging with doing that, especially in this capitalistic hellhole. I haven't decided if I like this jacket. I didn't get it for myself. We don't like brand names. I don't care like that, but I'm not gonna say no to free clothes, especially when it's winter and it's cold. Anyways, moving on. I think we're gonna read the exact same books from last time because I'm a fan. We had good stuff and I want to keep on with it, and I like these books. So we are going to return to the Rumi collection, edited by Kabir Helminski. We're gonna pick up where we left off because I liked this section. The step into placelessness. That is what these categories of stuff is called. All right, this one is called Travel. If a tree could get up and walk from place to place, it never suffers saw's pain, nor axe's cruel blow. If sun and moon lurked unmoving as solid rock, what kind of light could they hope to bestow? How bitter Bactris River, Tigris, and Euphrates, if they stood in place sluggish as the sea. Even air stagnating in a well becomes a poison murk. Can air suffer loss from delay? Just see. How an ocean's moisture travels upon air. Y'all just witnessed me choking on spit in the middle of talking. I just choked. You all saw it in real time and live time. I felt one little driplet of spit slide down the back of my throat, and I tried to like shove it right down the air tube. Trachea. You have two main tubes in your throat, one that leads to your lungs and one that leads to your stomach. Your esophagus is the one that leads to your stomach, and your trachea is your one that leads to your lungs. Bronchitis is in your trachea. Lungs. I almost died. Not like that, but you know, enough. Whew. It still feels like it's tickling. How when ocean's moisture travels upon air, as cloud it loses its load of salt and becomes sweet as cane. But fire itself must face ashes, death, and nothingness when held back from the motion of blazing flame. Take Joseph of Canaan. Only when he left his father's side and traveled to Egypt was he raised above other men. Or Moses. Only when he took leave of his mother and set out on the road to Midian did he become God's friend. Or Jesus, son of Mary, who wandered unceasing as water from the fountain of youth, which brings life to the dead. Or Muhammad, the messenger who left Mecca behind and only returned to rule it at an army's head. And when he flew upon Barak in the night, ascent reached the station of nearer than 2 bows' length. I could make this poem an encyclopedia of world-famous travelers. Did I not fear to bore you or try your strength? So take these few examples, and yourself become all the rest, my friend. Journey forth from your own self to God's self, voyage without end. The elephant's dream. There must exist an elephant so that when it sleeps by night, it can dream about Hindustan. After all, the ass can't dream about Hindustan because the ass has never been there or never left. So there's need of a spirit with the power of an elephant, able to journey in sleep to Hindustan. Desire makes the elephant remember Hindustan. Nostalgia by night gives his recollection form. Not just any scoundrel understands remember ye Allah. Return thou is not a chain for just any troublemaker. But don't give up hope. Become an elephant. Or if not quite that, search out a transmutation. Look, the alchemist of the celestial spheres, listen. Even now sounds come from the laboratory of the stone, as those architects of the pattern of heaven take our affairs in hand. Excuse me. If you cannot dream of the musk-breasted ones of Hindustan, if you are night-blind, still you can feel the touch. Their touch, brush your perception, still you can feel green things springing away fresh from your mortal clay. Prince Ibrahim ben Adham was one to whom in sleep the whole of the heart's Hindustan was once unveiled, causing him to break from the chains of his royalty, scatter his kingdom to the winds, and vanish. You will know the man who has dreamed of it by the way he leaps from sleep like a lunatic, heaping cinders on all his careful planting, springing the trap that has kept him prisoner. The gift and the giver. This is a different section. So we have finished the section of the step into placelessness. Placelessness. The gift and the giver. What does not come into man's imagination is called a gift, because whatever passes through his imagination is in proportion to his aspiration and his worth. However, God's gift is in proportion to God's worth. Therefore, the gift is that which is suitable to God, not what is suitable to the imagination or ambition of God's servant. What no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor has occurred to the mind of man. That is, no matter how much eyes have seen, ears heard, or minds conceived the gift you expect of me, my gift is above and beyond all that. Fiha ma fihi. Fihi ma fihi, number 31. The famous divine hadith, Adatsu li ibadi, what no eye have I prepared for my righteous servants. I always forget that the Islamic faith is I believe is older at this point than Judaism. Because they split at Jesus as well. They have almost identical. Basically, the three main Abrahamic religions are Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Christianity is the newest of the Abrahamic religions, even though they claim to be the OG. Don't they all? All right, well, we got that one. Let's move on. Let's keep it pushing. We're not even moving on. We're just gonna keep moving. Keep going on. My face looks very symmetrical in... No, it doesn't. It did for a minute. These sides looked very... My face is symmetrical from like here down, but then this side doesn't ever look it. I don't know. Ha! My inside thoughts came out. Sorry. Okay. Ooh. So I definitely read Tender Cakes, but the question is, did I start reading Light last time? No, we did. We definitely did start, because we talked about the lightness of fat and how most people don't think that of fat as a leavening agent, and how certain cakes don't have any chemical leavening, and generally chemical leavening is baking soda or baking powder. And if you whip fat, you can use that as a form of leavener. All right. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat. Oh, I'm not even in the picture. Huh. Brilliant human being. We adore her. Absolutely. Achieving lightness. Butter cakes and whipped cream. We eat so much as one of our main things that we do in our day-to-day existence as human beings and living things is we consume, right? We talked about dosing earlier. Our bodies are in constant need because they're in constant fluctuation because they are in continual cycles. And so we have to constantly gauge where that input output is and input when necessary. Food is one of the easiest ways to input. Our body likes to eat. It needs to eat. And thankfully, we have phenomenal human beings throughout history who have made food taste well. And we really, really, really respect those individuals who find a way to take our basic human needs and make them enjoyable and pleasurable, because pleasure, joy, is one of the feelings that we get to have and experience as human beings. And that's good. Achieving lightness. I'm going through another little existential shift, so I am preaching not necessarily to others. I am preaching to myself to help myself reestablish and refocus my forward momentum. I do speak for my own enjoyment. I do speak for my own learning. Absolutely. I speak to teach, and I speak to show compassion, and I speak to communicate, and I speak to share with others. And I speak for myself. Yay! Achieving lightness. Butter cakes and whipped cream. When seeking rich flavor in a fine, velvety crumb, make a butter cake or chocolate chip cookies. But take care to aerate this fat by creaming or whipping butter with sugar to trap air bubbles for leavening. Typically, cool room temperature butter is beaten together with sugar for 4 to 7 minutes until the mixture is light and fluffy. When done correctly, the butter will act as a net, entrapping millions of tiny air bubbles throughout the mixture. The key is to work air in slowly so that many consistently tiny bubbles form and you don't create too much heat through friction. It might be tempting to crank up the mixer so you can get the cake into the oven sooner, but trust me, that'll take you nowhere good fast. I speak from experience. The road to this chapter is lined with dense, fallen cakes. As you mix, monitor the butter's temperature. Remember, butter is an emulsion, and if it gets too warm, it will melt and the emulsion will break, or it simply won't be rigid enough to continue trapping air. You'll lose all the air you worked so hard to entrap. If butter is too cold, air won't be able to get in, not evenly at least, and the cake won't rise straight up. And if fat isn't properly aerated, chemical leavening won't make up for it. Baking soda and powder don't introduce any new air bubbles into a batter. They simply help expand, via the release of carbon dioxide gas, air bubbles already in place. Incorporating ingredients delicately is important for the same reason. If you go to great lengths to whip air into your fat, then carelessly combine the cake's dry and wet ingredients all at once, you'll lose all of the air you whipped up. This is where the folding, the technique of gently combining aerated ingredients into non-aerated ingredients, becomes important. Try to fold using light movements with a rubber spatula in one hand while spinning the bowl with the other hand. Though the chemistry behind whipped cream is slightly different than that of whipped butter, it must be very cold to begin with. The concept at work here is the same. Fat surrounds air bubbles. As cream is whipped, solid fat droplets in the liquid break open and join together. Remember that cream is a natural emulsion. Over whipped cream and the fat droplets will warm up and continue to stick to one another, making the cream unappetizingly chunky. Whip it further, and cream's emulsion will break, yielding a watery liquid, buttermilk, and solid fat, butter. Using fat. Only on the most special occasions do Persian meals end with dessert, so we never did much baking at our house. Plus, Maman, a health fiend, denied us excess sugar at every turn, though that did little more than encourage my brothers and me to develop fervent sweet tooths. If we wanted cookies or cake, then we had to make them ourselves, and Maman did her best to ensure it'd be an uphill battle the whole way. She didn't equip the kitchen with either a stand mixer or a microwave for softening butter, and she stored all the extra butter in the freezer. When it hit, the craving for cookies or cake was always urgent. I was never patient enough to wait for frozen butter to come up to room temperature, as every single recipe commanded. And even if I did somehow summon the discipline required to wait for butter to soften, without an electric mixer to help cream it, my cookie dough was always a mess, somehow completely overworked and undermixed at the same time, with huge pieces of unincorporated butter. As a typical teenage know-it-all, I knew I was way more clever than any recipe writer. So I figured I could just melt the butter for my baking on the stove and forego the softening and creaming process completely. Melted butter was a heck of a lot easier to stir into cookie dough with a wooden spoon, after all, and it sure made cake batter nice and pourable. What I didn't know then was that by melting the butter, I was destroying any chance I had at working air into it. My cookies and cakes always emerged from the oven disappointingly flat and dense. At an age when my primary goal in baking was to eat anything sweet, this was a minor problem. My brothers and I hungrily gobbled up whatever came out of the oven. As an adult with a slightly more discerning palate, I'm going for more than just a hit of sugar. I want my desserts, and frankly, everything I cook, to be uniformly delicious with the ideal texture and flavor. You probably do too. All it takes is a little forethought. Layering fats. Since fats have such a powerful impact on flavor, most dishes will benefit from the use of more than one kind. This is what I called layering fats. In addition to considering the cultural appropriateness of a particular fat, think about whether it will harmonize with the other ingredients of a dish. Excuse me. For example, if you're planning to finish a fish dish with butter sauce, use clarified butter to cook the fish so that the two fats will complement each other. Pair blood oranges with creamy avocado in a salad, then drizzle everything with agrumato olive oil to amplify the citrus flavor. For perfectly crisp waffles, melt butter to add to the batter, but brush the hot iron with fat that's rendered out of breakfast bacon. Sometimes you'll need to use multiple fats to achieve different textures within a single dish. Deep fry crisp pieces of fish in grapeseed oil, and then use olive oil to make a creamy aioli to serve alongside it. Use oil to make a supremely moist chocolate midnight cake, then slather it in buttercream frosting or softly whipped cream. Balancing fat. As with salt, the best way to correct overly fatty foods is to rebalance the dish, so that the solutions are similar to when you oversalt. Add more food to increase total volume, add more acid, water it down, or add starchy or dense ingredients. If possible, I even slept extra last night. I had a very hard time going to bed. I have been struggling to actually fall asleep, to actually get my body to a point where it relaxes enough to fall asleep. I have been struggling with that, so I did manage to eventually fall asleep last night. And I even slept for a decent portion of time. I slept in this morning. I did not have work today. And I'm still yawning a lot. I'm very tired. I'm letting today be my down day, my rest day. I'll do laundry and some light cleaning and my reading. And we're gonna call it a successful day. If possible, chill the dish. Let the fat come to the surface and solidify, then skim it off. Alternatively, lift food out of a very greasy pan and dab it on a clean towel, leaving the fat behind. Foods that are too dry or need just a bump of richness can always be corrected with a little olive oil or other appropriate oil, or another creamy ingredient such as sour cream, creme fraiche, egg yolk, or goat cheese to improve the texture and get the flavor right. Use vinaigrette, mayonnaise, a soft spreadable cheese, or creamy avocado to balance out dryness in a sandwich piled high with lean ingredients or built atop thick, crusty bread. I'm not gonna stop there. I need to go. I'll be right back. There are certain guidelines to things that are allowed to be on the platform, and using... I have a water bottle. Here, we're gonna tell you about it because I can't show it to you. I have a water bottle that is an old Tanqueray, like one of the large Tanqueray with a handles bottle. When I say old, it's like over 3 years, talking 4 years almost. And the label is ripped off. And I've got a cool little like octopus stopper in the top so that it's clearly a water bottle now, because I needed something larger, because the regular sized water bottles, I drink too fast, and then I don't hydrate myself as much because there's not enough water, and I don't like overly aerated water, which is why I use a water bottle so that it can settle and the air can get out. And long story short, it still looks like a Tanqueray bottle. So when I drink out of it, and because gin is clear, you can assume things. And I don't want it to get flagged on screen. That's really it. And so when I need to drink something that isn't coffee, thankfully we did not spill that, I have to leave the screen or pause. And unfortunately, iPhones don't let you pause your videos. Other Androids do. Androids let you pause your videos when you record them, but their video quality sucks. So I hate proprietary rights. Can you imagine how much growth can you imagine how much farther we would be advanced technologically, medically, scientifically if we shared? Instead of doing this individual fucking proprietary rights on shit. Like, hot take. Apple products suck. Their ability to communicate amongst each other is wonderful. But at that point, we have that with most other devices at this point. So that's not as helpful. Google does that. I have my Google Photos on every single device that I have. I have my OneDrive so that all of my files are on all of my devices that I have. Like, it's already that's shared. We are at that point. Android cameras suck. They do. I don't know why. They'll be the exact same fucking camera specs as the iPhone, and then they're trash. Even the good ones, even the new ones, even the good ones, like, they're just never quite the same. But Android's features and functionality and UX and UI are both designed with actual users in mind, not masses. Because when you're trying to design for a person and not a mass that you're trying to control and give limited options so that they think they have choice, when really you're just being like, here's 3 out of an entire span of plurality. It's like what they did with the vaccine in the very beginning, when they didn't have proprietary fucking rights on the information and they just shared it. Because sharing information and sharing access to information is how growth occurs. Hoarding it and isolating it does not allow it to work. You can't grow in isolation. I mean, it'd be an interesting concept to discuss. You cannot progress something in an isolation chamber and still expect it to be relevant. Just saying. There's no use on having it. There is no reason to have these dichotomies between iOS and Android. There should not be. What the fuck is this dichotomy? It's like you each took a piece and were like, these are our good things and we're not gonna share. But why? Is our goal not to create a better phone? No, I forgot. We're in capitalism. Our goal is to make money. But no, No, because guess what? The better phone never gets made if that's not your goal. If your goal is just to make a higher profit this year or this higher profit this quarter, you are never going to make a better phone no matter how much money you have. If your goal, and this is why capitalism fails, and this is why I think capitalists are the most stupid, short-sighted people, is because they don't long-term plan. Because they think that their end goal of making more money is going to make their other goals actualize. And that is untrue. If your end goal is not your actual fucking end goals, if your end goal is to make enough money to achieve your other goals, you won't achieve your other goals because they're not your end goals. You're only going to achieve hoarding and amassing wealth. And at that point, you are achieving the destruction of humanity. Because there's more than enough. But if you have too much, then other people don't have enough. I'm looking at all you billionaires out there, especially the minorities. How do you claim to be for your people while you hoard the wealth that is used to keep them in poverty? Unpopular opinion, tear me down for it. If you are a billionaire and a minority in America, you're not for your people. You're not for them. You're not from the bottom. I don't care. You are appropriating. You are putting onto yourself the white man's crown. How's that God complex feel? Because all you're doing is perpetuating the same shit that you had to struggle with in your life. You're just perpetuating it. I don't care that you sent a couple kids in your hometown to college. How many homeless are still there? We know for a fact that it takes less than $1 billion to completely eradicate homelessness in the United States. So again, I am looking at all of you minorities who are wealthy as shit. How many black billionaires are there? I don't see a lot of prison reform happening. And that's the OG slavery that we still have, that America was built on. If we do not actually redistribute the wealth, then you're the same as them. In fact, you're trying even harder. And that's absurd. I've been on a capitalist binge again. All these people who donate to charities, I don't care. Are you still hoarding wealth? Then you're still the problem. Then you are still creating the inequality that gave you the life you have. And perpetuating it and multiplying it farther down the generational line. And even more so in your present day. You're making the problem worse, not better. Having black billionaires doesn't make capitalism work. Dumbasses. I'm gonna go drink my water now. And it's not gin, it's water. But fuck you, YouTube. But thank you, YouTube. You're doing great. I think. I don't know. I'm whatever. Platform. Hot. Heat. I'm gonna go drink water now. drank my water. I have Santa socks even though it's not Christmas no more. And I don't celebrate Christmas because I don't believe in religion. All right. I don't even drink like that anymore. That's why I use it as a water bottle. I do not. It was for a candle. Fuck. Well, we're gonna set that there for a second. And I'm gonna pick that up. The joys of being a klutz, but nothing was broken and it didn't land on my laptop, which was right behind it, and it could have. So we're gonna count it as a win. And like, yeah, did my color pencils probably just get cracked on the inside? Yeah. Oh well, 90% of these are from the freaking dollar store, so it's fine. We're gonna move this over. We're gonna do this again. We're gonna hope for the best. I'm gonna try this again. That's not where that goes. That's a little better. All right. We're doing great. I flipped up the entire, so it's on a bench right now. I'm freezing. That's why we're doing the hood. Heater's so weird. Temperamental. Sometimes it works all the time, and now sometimes it doesn't. Anyways, the bench opens, and I went to put my foot up here, and I flipped it, and the only thing that fell was the thing that's holding the phone up. I'm so distracted. So I was distracted. We're just going through the distracted phases. Two more. We can do this together. Make it through. Heaven in Disorder by Slavoj Zizek. Brilliant. Another brilliant human being. Highly, highly, highly recommend. He has a YouTube channel. Genius. Good stuff. Heaven in Disorder by Slavoj Zizek. And I put it here. I think I read up until this part. I lined the bookmark up with the thing. It's hard to remember where I left off. So if we do a little repeat, it's okay. Life really changes fast. We are thus facing a horrible false alternative, a big corporate reset, or a nationalist populism which pretends to oppose big corporations, but ultimately amounts to the same. The Great Reset is the formula of how to change some things, even many things, in order that things basically remain the same. Yeah, that is fantastic. Yeah, perfect. So is there a third way, outside the two extremes of restoring the old normality and a corporate Great Reset? Yes, a true Great Reset. It is no secret what needs to be done. Greta Thunberg has made it clear. Excuse me. First, we should finally recognize the pandemic crisis for what it is, part of a global crisis of our entire way of life, from ecology to new social tensions. Second, we should establish social control and regulation over the economy.
Third, we should rely on science, but without simply accepting it as the agent of decision making. Why not? Let's return to Habermas, with whom we began. Our predicament is that we are compelled to act while knowing that we don't know the full coordinates of the situation we are in. And non-acting would itself function as an act. But this is not the basic situation, but is this not the basic situation of every action? Our great advantage is that we know how much we don't know, and this knowing about our not knowing opens up a space of freedom. We act when we don't know the whole situation, but this is not simply our limitation. What gives us freedom in that situation, in our social sphere at least, is in itself open, not fully predetermined. Our present situation in the pandemic is certainly open. We've learned the first lesson. Lockdown light is not enough. They tell us we, our economy, cannot afford another hard lockdown. So let's change the economy. Lockdown is the most radical negative gesture within the existing order. The way beyond, to a new positive order, leads through politics, not science. What has to be done is changing our economic life so that it will be able to survive the lockdowns and emergencies that surely await us, in the same way that a war compels us to ignore market limitations and find a way to do what is impossible in a free market economy. Impossible. Back in March 2003, Donald Rumsfeld, then the US Secretary of Defense, engaged in a little bit of amateur philosophizing about the relationship between the known and the unknown. Quote, "There are known knowns. There are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know we don't know." End quote. What he forgot to add was the crucial fourth term, the unknown knowns, things we don't know that we know, which is precisely the Freudian unconscious, the quote, knowledge which doesn't know itself, end quote, as Lacan used to say. If Rumsfeld thought the main dangers in the confrontation with Iraq were the unknown unknowns, the threats from Saddam we were not even aware of, our reply should be that the main dangers are, on the contrary, the unknown knowns, the disavowed beliefs and superstitions we are not even aware of adhering to ourselves. We should read Habermas's claim that we have never had so much knowledge about not knowing through these categories. The pandemic shook what we thought we knew that we knew. It made us aware that we didn't know that we didn't know. And in the way we confronted it, we relied on what we didn't know that we know. All our presumptions and prejudices that determine our actions, although we are not even aware of them. We are not dealing here with the simple passage from not knowing to knowing, but with the much more subtle passage from not knowing to knowing what we don't know. Our positive knowing remains the same in this passage, but we gain a free space for action. It is with regard to what we don't know that we know, our presumptions and prejudices, that the approach of China and Taiwan and Vietnam to the pandemic was so much better than that of Europe and the United States. I am getting tired of the internally repeated claim, yes, the Chinese contained the virus, but at what price? While only a whistleblower can tell us the whole story of what really went on there, the fact is that when the virus broke out in Wuhan, the authorities imposed lockdowns and halted the majority of production across the country, clearly prioritizing human lives over the economy. This happened with some delay, true, but they took the crisis extremely seriously. Now they are reaping the rewards, including economically. And let's be clear, this was only possible because the Communist Party is still able to control and regulate the economy. There is social control over market mechanisms, albeit a totalitarian control. But again, the question is not how they did it in China, but how we should do it. The Chinese way is not the only effective way. It is not objectively necessary in my measurable sense. The pandemic is not just a viral process. It is a process that takes place within certain economic, social, and ideological coordinates that are open to change. Now, at the very end of 2020, we live in a crazy time in which the hope that vaccines will work is mixed with a growing depression, despair even, due to the growing number of infections and the almost daily discoveries of new unknowns about the virus. In principle, the answer to what is to be done is easy here. We have the means and resources to restructure healthcare and economy so that they serve the needs of the people in a time of crisis. However, to quote the last lines of Brecht's In Praise of Communism from his play Mother, ist das einfach, das schwer zu machen ist. It is the simple thing that is so hard to do. There are many obstacles that make it so hard to do. Above all, the global capitalist order and its ideological hegemony. Do we then need a new communism? Yes, but what am I tempted to call a moderately conservative communism? All the steps that are necessary, from global mobilization against viral and other threats, to establishing procedures to constrain market mechanisms and socialize the economy, but done in a way that is conservative, in the sense of making an effort to conserve the conditions of human life, which paradoxically will require changing things, and moderate, in the sense of carefully taking into account the unpredictable side effects of our measures. As Emmanuel Renault pointed out, the key Marxian category that introduces class struggle into the very heart of the critique of political economy is that of the so-called tendential laws, the laws that describe a necessary tendency in capitalist development, like the tendency of the falling rate of profit. As Renault noted, it was already Adorno who has insisted on these dimensions of Marx's concept of tendenz that makes it irreducible to a simple trend. Describing this tendency, Marx himself uses the term antagonism. The falling rate of profit is a tendency that pushes capitalists to strengthen workers' exploitation and workers to resist it, so that the outcome is not predetermined but depends on the struggle. For instance, in some welfare states, organized workers face the capitalists to make considerable concessions. The communism I am speaking about is exactly such a tendency. The reasons for it are obvious. We need global action to fight health and environmental threats, and the economy will have to be somehow socialized. And we should read the predominant set of reactions of global capitalism to the pandemic: the fake Great Reset, nationalist populism, solidarity reduced to empathy, etc., precisely as a reaction to the communist tendency. So how will the communist tendency prevail? A sad answer: through more repeated crises. Let's make it clear. The virus is atheist in the strongest sense of the term. Yes, we should analyze how the pandemic is socially conditioned, but it is basically a product of meaningless contingency. There is no deeper message in it. It cannot be for us God's punishment, as the plague was in medieval times. Before choosing Virgil's famous line on Cheronto movebo as the motto of his interpretation of dreams, Freud considered another candidate, Satan's words from Milton's Paradise Lost. What reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. This is how we, contemporary Satans who are destroying our earth, should react to viral and ecological threats. If we are compelled to admit that our situation is hopeless, we should gain resolution from despair. We should accept that our situation is desperate and act resolutely upon it. To quote Greta Thunberg again, doing our best is no longer good enough. Now we need to do the seemingly impossible. Futurology deals with what is possible. We need to do what is, from the standpoint of the existing global order, impossible. All right, we're gonna do it. Chapter 24, Christ in the time of a pandemic. At Christmas, we commemorate the birth of Jesus Christ. What does this unique and, as Hegel put it, even monstrous event, in a grotesque disproportionality, God himself, not his messenger or prophet, appears as an ordinary person in our ordinary reality, mean to us today when a large part of humanity is crippled by a brutal pandemic and threatened by many other dangers, from global warming to social unrest? We live in some kind of hell, caught in a permanent tension and depression, the pandemic having destroyed the daily life we were used to. And here Christ enters. But how? The standard answer is that, especially in times of trouble, we should remember there is a higher almighty power which loves us and protects us, so we should turn to him in prayer and trust in our fate. No matter how dark things are, salvation is on the horizon, and maybe God allowed the pandemic to happen in order to send us a warning. ... I think this entire traditional line of thought should be abandoned. I agree. Thanks, Slavoj, Zizek. We should make a harder effort to grasp the unique role of Christ, which is something that escapes not only traditional Christianity, but even mysticism at its best. Which means, of course, Meister Eckhart. A claim sometimes attributed to Eckhart, which is not found in his work, is that he'd rather be in hell with Jesus than in heaven without him. This claim should be read not just as a hypothesis, but as a real choice we have to make, the choice between God and Christ. And it is the choice between heaven and hell. As Arthur Rimbaud wrote in his A Season in Hell, I believe I am in hell, therefore I am. One has to take this claim in its full Cartesian sense. Only in hell can I exist as a singular, unique I. Mystics progress from the temporal order of creatures to the primordial abyss of eternity, but they avoid the key question: how do creatures arise from this primordial abyss? Not how can we reach eternity from our temporal finite being, but how can eternity itself descend into temporal finite existence? The only answer is that eternity is the ultimate prison, a suffocating closure, and it is only the fall into creaturely life which introduces opening into human and even divine experience. The point was made very clear by G.K. Chesterton, who wrote apropos of the fashionable claim about the alleged spiritual identity of Buddhism and Christianity. Quote, love desires personality, therefore love desires division. It is the instinct of Christianity to be glad that God has broken the universe into little pieces. Christianity is a sword which separates and sets free. No other philosophy makes God actually rejoice in the separation of the universe into living souls. End quote. And Chesterton is fully aware that it is not enough for God to separate man from himself so that mankind will love him. This separation has to be reflected back into God himself, so that God is abandoned by himself. Quote, when the world shook and the sun was wiped out of heaven, it was not at the crucifixion, but at that cry from the cross, the cry which confessed that God was forsaken of God. End quote. Because of this overlapping between man's isolation from God and God's isolation from himself, Christianity is, Chesterton writes, quote, terribly revolutionary. That a good man may have his back to the wall is no more than we knew already, but that God could have his back to the wall is a boast for all insurgents forever. Christianity is the only religion on earth that has felt that omnipotence made God incomplete. Christianity alone has felt that God, to be holy God, must have been a rebel as well as a king. End quote. Chesterton is fully aware that we are thereby approaching, quote, a matter more dark and awful than it is easy to discuss, end quote. He writes, quote, in that terrific tale of the Passion, there is a distinct emotional suggestion that the author of all things, in some unthinkable way, went not only through agony, but through doubt, end quote. In the standard form of atheism, emancipated humans stop believing in God. In Christianity, God dies for himself. In his, quote, Father, why have you abandoned me, end quote, Christ himself commits what is, for a Christian, the ultimate sin. He wavers in his faith. If we take seriously the paradox, we are prohibited to take refuge in the standard transcendent figure of God as a secret master who knows the meaning of what appears to us as a meaningless catastrophe. The God who sees the entire picture, in which what we perceive as a blight contributes to global harmony. When confronted with an event like the Holocaust or the death of millions in Congo in recent years, is it not too obscene to claim that these horrors have a deeper meaning and that they contribute to the harmony of the whole? Is there a whole which can teleologically justify and thus redeem an event like the Holocaust? Christ's death on the cross signifies that one should drop without restraint the notion of God as a transcendent caretaker who guarantees the happy outcome of our acts. The guarantee of historical teleology. Christ's death is the death of this God. It refuses any, quote, deeper meaning, end quote, that obfuscates the brutal reality of historical catastrophes. This also allows us to provide the only consistent Christian answer to the eternal critical question. Was God there in Auschwitz? How could he allow such immense suffering? Why didn't he intervene and prevent it? The answer is neither that we should learn to withdraw from our terrestrial vicissitudes and identify with the blessed peace of God who dwells above our misfortunes, from where we become aware of the ultimate nullity of our human concerns, the standard pagan answer, nor that God knows what he is doing and will somehow repay us for our suffering, heal our wounds, and punish the guilty, the standard teleological answer. The answer is found, for example, in the final scene of Shooting Dogs, released in the US as Beyond the Gates, in which a group of Tutsi refugees in a Christian school know that they will be shortly slaughtered by a Hutu mob. A young British teacher at the school breaks down in despair and asks his fatherly figure, the elder priest, played by John Hur, where Christ is now to prevent the slaughter. The priest's answer is, Christ is now present here more than ever. He is suffering here with us. When we curse our fate in despair, when we courageously accept that no higher force will help us, he is here with us. So the true message of Christmas is not, we are safe, somebody up there is taking care of us, he sent his own son as his messenger, but we are alone, responsible for our fate. This lack of a transcendent support is another name of freedom. Christ gives body to the divine gift of freedom. Or, as Ramstein put it in their On Dich, without you I cannot live, with you I am alone. Only with Christ are we truly alone. Today, we act with Christ only if we assume our responsibility for the pandemic and other catastrophes, and act together in global solidarity, aware that no higher power guarantees the happy outcome. The Christian name for this global solidarity is Holy Spirit, the community of believers bound by love. When Christ was asked by his followers how they will know of his return after his death, he answered them, "When there will be love between two of you, I will be there." Christ returns as a link of love between his followers, not as a higher power uniting them. And that's where we're going to stop.
I'm gonna go get another drink of water. I'm gonna come back and we'll finish. Thanks for joining. Sorry there's been some breaks. Thank you for being patient and present with all of my breaks. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining with me today. Had a glorious time reading. I'm out of coffee. That's why we got water. The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Chapter 28. It was a long time before anyone spoke. Out of the corner of his eye, Fuchs could see the sea of tense, expectant faces down in the square outside. "We're going to get lynched, aren't we?" he whispered. "It was a tough assignment," said Deep Thought mildly. 42, yelled Loonfall. "Is that all you got to show for 7.5 million years' work?" "I checked it very thoroughly," said the computer, "and that quite definitely is the answer. I think the problem, to be quite honest with you, is that you've never actually known what the question is." "But it was the great question! The ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything," howled Loonfall. "Yes," said Deep Thought with the air of one who suffers fools gladly. "But what actually is it?"
A slow, stupefied silence crept over the men as they stared at the computer and then at each other. Well, you know, it's just everything. Everything, offered Fuchska weakly. Exactly, said Deep Thought. So once you do know what the question actually is, you'll know what the answer means. Oh, terrific, muttered Fuchska, flinging aside his notebook and wiping away a tiny tear. Look, all right, said Loonqual. Can you just please tell us the question? The ultimate question? Yes. Of life, the universe, and everything? Yes. Deep Thought pondered for a moment. Tricky, he said. But can you do it? Cried Loonqual. Deep Thought pondered this for another long moment. Finally, no, he said firmly. Both men collapsed onto their chairs in despair. But I'll tell you who can, said Deep Thought. They both looked up sharply. Who? Tell us! Suddenly, Arthur began to feel his apparently non-existent scalp begin to crawl as he found himself moving slowly but inexplorably forward toward the console. But it was only a dramatic zoom on the part of whoever had made the recording, he assumed. I speak of none but the computer that is to come after me, intoned Deep Thought, his voice regaining its accustomed declamatory tones. A computer whose merest operational parameters I am not worthy to calculate. And yet I will design it for you. A computer that can calculate the question to the ultimate answer. A computer of such infinite and subtle complexity that organic life itself shall form part of its operational matrix. And you yourself shall take on new forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. Yes, I shall design this computer for you, and I shall name it also unto you, and it shall be called the Earth. Fuchs gaped at Deep Thought. What a dull name, he said. And great incisions appeared down the length of his body. Loonqual, too, suddenly sustained horrific gashes from nowhere. The computer console blotched and cracked, the walls flickered and crumbled, and the room crashed upward into its own ceiling. Slartibartfast was standing in front of Arthur, holding the two wires. End of the tape, he explained. Chapter 29. Zaphod, wake up! Hey, come on, wake up. Just let me stick to what I'm good at, yeah? Muttered Zaphod and rolled away from the voice back to sleep. Do you want me to kick you? Said Ford. Would it give you a lot of pleasure? Said Zaphod blearily. No, nor me, so what's the point? Stop bugging me. Zaphod curled himself up. He got a double dose of the gas, said Trillian, looking down at him. 2 windpipes. And stop talking, said Zaphod. It's hard enough trying to sleep anyway. What's the matter with the ground? It's all cold and hard. It's gold, said Ford. With an amazingly balletic movement, Zaphod was standing and scanning the horizon, because that was how far the gold ground stretched in every direction, perfectly smooth and solid. It gleamed like... It's impossible to say what it gleamed like, because nothing in the universe gleams in quite the same way that a planet made of solid gold does. Who put all that there? Yelled Zaphod, goggle-eyed. Don't get excited, said Ford. It's only a catalog. A who? A catalog, said Trillian. Illusion. An illusion. How can you say that? Cried Zaphod, falling to his hands and knees and staring at the ground. He poked it and prodded it. It was very heavy and very slightly soft. He could mark it with his fingernail. It was very yellow and very shiny, and when he breathed on it, his breath evaporated off it in that very peculiar and special way that breath evaporates off solid gold. Trillian and I came round a while ago, said Ford. We shouted and yelled till somebody came, and they carried on shouting and yelling till they got fed up and put us in their planet catalog to keep us busy till they were ready to deal with us. This is all sensotape. Zaphod stared at him bitterly. Ah, shit, he said. You wake me up from my own perfectly good dream to show me somebody else's. He sat down in a huff. What's that series of valleys over there? He said. Hallmark, said Ford. We had a look. We didn't wake you earlier, said Trillian. The last planet was knee-deep in fish. Fish? Some people like the oddest things. And before that, said Ford, we had platinum. Bit dull. We thought you'd like to see this one, though. Seas of light glared at them in one solid blaze wherever they looked. Very pretty, said Zaphod petulantly. In the sky, a huge green catalog number appeared. It flickered and changed, and when they looked around again, so had the land. As with one voice, they all went, yup. The sea was purple. The beach they were on was composed of tiny yellow and green pebbles, presumably terribly precious stones. The mountains in the distance seemed soft and undulating, and red peaks. Nearby stood a solid silver beach table with a frilly mauve parasol and silver tassels. In the sky, a huge sign appeared, replacing the catalog number. It said, "Whatever your tastes, Magrathea can cater for you. We are not proud." And 500 entirely naked women dropped out of the sky on parachutes. In a moment, the sea vanished and left them in a springtime meadow full of cows. "Ow," said Zaphod, "my brains." "You want to talk about it," said Ford. "Yeah, okay," said Zaphod, and all three sat down and ignored the scenes that came and went around them. "I figured this," said Zaphod. "Whatever happened to my mind, I did it. And I did it in such a way that it wouldn't be detected by the government screening tests. And I wasn't to know anything about it myself. Pretty crazy, right?" The other two nodded in agreement. "So I reckon, what's so secret that I can't let anybody know I know it? Not the galactic government, not even myself." And the answer is I don't know, obviously. But I put a few things together and I can begin to guess. When did I decide to run for president? Shortly after the death of President Uden Vranks. You remember Uden, Ford? "Yeah," said Ford. "He was that guy we met when we were kids. The Arcturian captain? He was a gas. He gave us conkers when you bust your way into his mega freighter. Said you were the most amazing kid he'd ever met." "What's all this?" said Trillian. "Ancient history," said Ford. "When we were kids together on Betelgeuse, the Arcturian mega freighters used to carry most of the bulky trade between the galactic center and the outlying regions. The Betelgeuse trading scouts used to find the markets, and the Arcturians would supply them. There was a lot of trouble with space pirates before they were wiped out in the Dordelis Wars, and the mega freighters had to be equipped with the most fantastic defense shields known to galactic science. They were real brutes of ships, and huge. In orbit around a planet, they would eclipse the sun. One day, young Zaphod here decided to raid one. On a Trijet scooter designed for stratosphere work. A mere kid. I mean, forget it. It was crazier than a mad monkey. I went along for the ride because I'd got some very safe money on him not doing it and didn't want him coming back with fake evidence. So what happens? We get in his Trijet, which he had souped up into something totally other, crossed 3 parsecs in a matter of weeks, bust our way into a mega freighter I still don't know how, marched onto the bridge waving toy pistols and demanded conkers. A wilder thing I have not known. Lost me a year's pocket money. For what? Conkers. The captain was this really amazing guy. Uden Vrank, said Zaphod. He gave us food, booze, stuff from really weird parts of the galaxy. Lots of conkers, of course. And we had just the most incredible time. Then he teleported us back into the maximum security wing of the Betelgeuse State Prison. He was a cool guy. Went on to become president of the galaxy. Zaphod paused. The scene around them was currently plunged into gloom. Dark mists swirled round them, and elephantine shapes lurked indistinctly in the shadows. The air was occasionally rent with the sounds of illusory beings murdering other illusory beings. Presumably enough people must have liked this sort of thing to make it a paying proposition. Ford, said Zaphod quietly. Yeah. Just before Uden died, he came to see me. What? You never told me. No. What did he say? What did he come to see you about? He told me about the heart of gold. It was his idea that I should steal it. His idea? Yeah, said Zaphod. And the only possible way of stealing it was to be at the launching ceremony. Ford gaped at him in astonishment for a moment and then roared with laughter. Are you telling me, he said, that you set yourself up to become the president of the galaxy just to steal that ship? That's it, said Zaphod, with a sort of grin that would get most people locked away in a room with soft walls. But why, said Ford. What's so important about having it? Dunno, said Zaphod. I think if I'd consciously known what was so important about it and what I would need it for, it would have showed up on the brain screening test and I would never have passed. I think Uden told me a lot of things that are still locked away. So you think you went and mucked about inside your own brain as a result of Uden talking to you? He was a hell of a talker. Yeah, but Zaphod, old mate, you want to look after yourself, you know. Zaphod shrugged. I mean, don't you have any inkling of the reason for all this? Asked Ford. Zaphod thought hard about this, and doubts seemed to cross his mind. No, he said at last. I don't seem to be letting myself into any of my secrets. Still, he added on further reflection, I can understand that. I wouldn't trust myself further than I could spit a rat. A moment later, the last planet in the catalog vanished from beneath them, and the solid world resolved itself again. They were sitting in a plush waiting room full of glass-top tables and design awards. A tall, Magrathian man was standing in front of them. The mice will see you now, he said.
And that is where we will end today. Lovely people, thank you once again for being here, for being present, for being patient with our readings and my own distractedness. Until next time, see y'all on the flip side. Deuces.